it a little more, and it's puzzling. I still don't agree with some of Fred Beck's conclusions, but much later, you know, Fred Beck was really on the woo side of this whole thing. He had told some stories about when they found these tracks sometimes, and Hank had led them to a sandbar where out in the sandbar there were 2 tracks 4 inches deep, but there were no tracks leading into the sandbar or exiting the sandbar. There were just 2 big tracks right there, and they were all puzzled. Fred Beck came up with the conclusion that something let this thing down out of the sky, and it dropped down out of the sky, and I guess it did something right there on the sandbar, and then got beamed right back up in the sky, or something of that nature. And he started believing, Fred Beck did, because of things like that. And I've seen myself, you know, 1 or 2 tracks out in a field and nothing else. I've seen some similar things to that, maybe not as detailed as they did, but I've seen some similarities to that. And Fred Beck started believing in manifestation, and he started believing that the Bigfoot were from like a lower plane, and when the conditions and the vibration is at a certain frequency, he believed that they could appear in a solid body. He didn't think they were animal spirits, but he thought that they were something that could take on, you know, a physical solid body if the vibration and the conditions were just right. And I mean, that's pretty wooey right there. He thought that they were from another dimension, but a very lower part, a lower plane. And
well, he was, yeah, because he was trying to figure out what they were. Well, he talked to the local First Nations there, and they believe that Bigfoot is the spirit of the wilderness. Okay, but unfortunately, and I've come across this a lot of people believe that all of us First Nations believe exactly the same thing. Okay, different tribes have different beliefs. Some do believe that Bigfoots are woodland spirits. Some are terrified of them. You stay away from them. You don't have nothing to do with them. They're a bad omen. Just stay away from them. Or, you know, like my people believe that they're an animal no different than a bear or a wolf or a bobcat. Fred Beck went on to say that the whole experience on St. Helens was a psychic experience, he said. Exactly. And then he went on to say that he's been, you know, clairvoyant all his life, and a big spirit Indian helped them find that mind, although this wasn't mentioned by any of the other gentlemen. And all he said, you can't shoot them, although, you know, they were able to shoot one. Now this doesn't discredit his story, because this was said later in life when he was trying to get answers for what had happened. I mean, they shot at them, they didn't shoot them. Okay, first off, Bigfoots move fast for something their size, so you might have thought you shot them when you didn't. And they're pretty thick boned, I would think. Given the size of them, they're pretty thick boned.
Yeah. This kind of follows the pattern that, you know, of a lot of legends of Sasquatch. There are many details about Sasquatch doing very physical things and being another creature out there. But then there comes a point with the Sasquatch where there's this, you know, spiritual type, you know, tales about them like what the Indians have. And it just seems to me that, you know, they're such shadowy figures, and, you know, it's really hard. So many people hear about them, but very few have close personal encounters with them. and they just end up being in the realm, to a certain extent, of spirituality in some way, shape, or form. And Fred Beck went to that point too, where he thought, as you said, that these were some type of, spiritual type creatures, and maybe they weren't, developed or intelligent enough, to be in a physical body all the time. They are on a lower plane and sometimes materialize into a physical body.
Yeah, because he didn't understand. Yeah, he didn't understand, so he looks for answers wherever he could get them. And at one point, he thinks that they're from a UFO or aliens. Another time, he thinks that they're spiritual beings, because he talked to the local First Nations there, who are actually scared of them, and he says that in his story that First Nations stay away from them. They are actually afraid of them because they are so big. And I mean, they attacked his cabin. Their cabin, so they seem like they're a little aggressive now. But how would you react if somebody went shooting at you? That's what started this. All they did was see the tracks, and they shot at them.
Yeah, he seemed real stuck
then they
on
attacked the cabin.
Yeah, he seemed stuck on the fact that they shot him, but they could never find any trace of him. That really had a big impact on Fred Beck as the years rolled on. He really spent a lot of time thinking about that.
Because he didn't understand what happened. They shot you. When I heard this story as a kid, I was disgusted with these people. So you've got, Bigfoot's hanging around. They're not doing anything. They're just hanging around. They're watching. Okay, I heard the story when I was 6 or 7 years old. And I'm still wondering if the Bigfoots weren't bothering them, why were they shooting at them? They were shooting at them out of fear.
Exactly.
And
they were around the whole time, but like you say, nothing ever happened until they took a shot at one of them.
Yeah, and even as a little kid, I'm saying, why did they shoot at them? They attacked the cabin after they shot at them. They should have left them alone.
Yeah, more recent, accounts, from recent, years. You've even heard where some, hunters have pointed a rifle at them, and all of a sudden, they know what that is, and the Bigfoots get very angry when the rifle even just gets pointed at them. They know this. The Indians had warnings that, hey, if you leave them alone, they leave you alone. If you directly mess with these creatures, they will not forget. If you kill one of their kind or injure one of their kind, they're not going to forget.
Yeah. Shooting at them just brought them down on their heads.
Exactly. So from that standpoint, I really believe in this tale and how it was originally reported, as far as how it went into the woo. I've seen some strange things out there, but I don't really have any reason to really buy into the later woo part of this whole thing. I don't think that they hit these creatures squarely like maybe they thought that they did, but it's very possible they could have shot and killed the one that toppled over, the first one that ran away. I think maybe they didn't hit him. The one that toppled over and they could never find a trace of, it's possible that they killed one of them.
And they came and drove them out because they killed one. This is what we know, that unless it's a single Bigfoot looking to make its own family, they are in family units. You don't know which one you just shot. That could have been one of the more important ones in their family unit. Mm-hmm. So you imagine what would happen if they shot like the father figure or the head male. if they actually live in groups like gorillas do.
I think you mess with any of them. I think the point blank and bottom line, if you shot, you injured, you quote unquote, seriously threatened anyone that's involved in their clan, their group, then there's going to be hell to pay. They're going to take matters into their own hands. But afterwards, though, they're probably going to leave that area, and if they don't have to come back, they're probably not going to, or they're going to be like they always are. After they lash out, they're going to be very stealthy, and you're not really going to be aware of their presence. But I think in this instance, this all started definitely when they first took shots at the first one. That's what brought it down upon them. So, I really believe this story is a real, actual story. I don't have a problem believing it.
Well, we have an area up here called Snail Grove Lake. It was featured in Monster Quest. Okay, and there was a particular Bigfoot in the lakes to assault the cabin with rocks. And it was also claimed that it broke into the cabin and was messing with the fridge. Now, I got as close as I could get a couple of years ago when I went up to Algonquin Park. And those ones up there, they're big ones. They're 8-footers, and they're shaggy, and they pull whole trees out of the road, to stop the cottagers from getting in. It's quite humorous. But that particular Bigfoot was doing the same thing to the cabin, throwing rocks and stuff at it. It didn't go into the full assault mode like these other ones did. It just didn't want anybody in there. It didn't want the researchers from the TV shows in there. And they got great aim, let me tell you, because they were hitting the cameras. And if they wanted to actually hit us in the head and whatnot when we're out there, they would do it.
Alrighty. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cryptid Podcast as we talked about the attack on 8th Canyon. I'm Dwight Campbell.